Um, and hopefully that started the recording. I don't know if it did or not. Okay, well, yeah, everyone, welcome to the DuckDB in Action book club. Kind of an exciting, I think, the first DuckDB themed book club on the data science learning community. And yeah, so I'm excited to jump in. I thought maybe to start, we could, everyone could, if you want to, you're comfortable doing it, we could go around and, maybe just say our names and either where we're from or something about ourselves or why we are interested in DuckDB or if we've used it before, anything you think is a relevant or fun fact, I think, to share. And so I will try to call on people, I guess, in the order that they appear, but it can get tricky because probably my order will be different, and I'm actually not sure if I'm seeing everybody. Sorry. Uh, how do I see all the participants? Oh, gallery view. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, so I am Cory. I am kind of have for the last like quite a while been like in academia and was kind of finishing up a degree and uh, kind of as part of the struggle of processing like larger data sets, I kind of like discovered DuckDB and it really changed that problem for me. It made stuff that I really couldn't do with like base R or dplyr or whatever kind of was now possible with DuckDB. So that was kind of what really got me excited about it. Um, and I'm based in Massachusetts in the United States. So and so Umair, I think is that right? You're next on my list.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Omer Durrani, and I'm also in Ontario, Amir, and I work as a data scientist. Um, Regarding DuckDB, I'm interested in using it for as a backend for Shiny apps, and I've tried Arrow before, and it works out pretty good, but I want to see how it compares with DuckDB.
That sounds like a great application. So Amir is next.
Hey all, I'm from Ontario as well, and I work as an analytics developer in a large bank here in Canada. And I've been trying to use solutions more and more in our team that are either kind of open source tools or just kind of tools that have maybe kind of broader use cases. So being in a bank, we love Microsoft tools, and
Mhm,
for example, one of the dashboards that our team uses, I've kind of taken away from Power BI and put it
mhm.
a Streamlit app, and yeah, and so DuckDB is interesting to me because of some of the different ways we can potentially apply it in some of our analytics solutioning. So I'm curious to learn more about that.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, definitely in kind of when I was researching the slides, I came up with quite a few blog posts that were like, oh, how can I, basically use DuckDB as the backend for a dashboard? So it seems like that's a very
Yeah.
common application. Andreas is next on my list, and if you aren't able to turn on your camera, that's fine, or speak. I can just skip over if.
I
Oh,
can
hello.
my camera is working, but I'm not dressed. I I
Oh,
just been remembered that I have a meeting in about 10 minutes. So well,
oh, okay.
I can switch it on for a second. So I'm here drinking a coffee, but the camera is not adjusted. So like that. And now I switch it off again.
I'm glad
Um,
we got to see you just for a second.
well, the picture is well, it's some time ago, but that's me. Um, I'm a consultant and sometimes researcher.
Hmm.
I'm a German national, but living in
Hmm.
Paraguay in Latin America.
Hmm.
And I haven't read the book yet, so I have no idea what Dr. V is good for. But I hope I can use it. I need. I'm searching actually for a multi-purpose a, date database. No,
Hmm.
yeah, that's a work. And for trying to do things with large data, big data, but also for this AI stuff
Mhm.
for vector databases. So I'm curious, and just to see how far I get with DuckDB.
That sounds great. Yeah, hopefully this first chapter will be helpful then, because it is kind of about like when can you use DuckDB and when not. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. Well, gosh, now people are moving around as they speak. Let's see. Jonathan, I think is next.
Good morning. So I'm Jonathan. I'm a consultant for a couple of different pharma companies in the US, but I'm based in Adelaide in South Australia. The time just happens to work out pretty well for me. I'm just interested in keeping up with technologies. I'm mainly R, but polyglot over a bunch of other different languages as well. I work with a lot of databases, and yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff about DuckDB. I figure I should learn how to do it.
Right. And so Josh is next, but if maybe he's not able to
I
jump
can
in, I'm
do
not
that.
sure. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm good. Thanks. Just I have a 6-month-old, so he's just having a
Oh my
ball in my
gosh.
lap.
Okay.
So
That's
just
very
listening at
young.
the moment. Yeah, yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Josh Percy. I am also a Canadian from Ontario,
Oh.
Canada, although I'm living in BC at the moment. I am interested in DuckDB for a couple reasons. One, to store large amounts of data when I don't have access to a like cloud hosted platform. It just is a nice way to parcel the data and send it through like various file sharing platforms. I also, at my place of work, the analysts aren't really allowed to like actually run SQL queries of the data.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
despite working here for like 5 years, have very little SQL experience. So DuckDB, like building my own DuckDB database and putting data in it and working with it is like my own way to kind of get SQL experience on my resume. Um, so yeah, that's my interest in DuckDB. Looking forward to the book club.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, like, I don't know how, this is just my impression is that like maybe among data kind of scientists and analysts, there was like a moment where SQL was kind of like on the way out because we, would use like a Python data frame or an R data frame, but now all these new technologies are kind of using SQL as the syntax. So now it's like coming back in. So like I feel like a lot of us kind of like skipped learning SQL because it wasn't that important, but now it kind of is. So uh, and then so Ron is last, and if you're not able to jump in, that's fine.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I hope you can hear me. Yeah, my name is
Yep, we can.
Ron. I'm a consultant as well. I consult for different companies and also universities doing research projects. The most recent
Mm-hmm.
one was one that involved something that this DuckDB would have been perfect for because it involved lots of big tables of venture capital data from PitchBook. And we ended up with a kind of a mess in our data cleaning. And I kind of regret not using something like DuckDB. Part of the problem is we were using multiple languages, R and Python
Mm-hmm.
for different
Right.
parts of it.
Yeah.
So people were like doing over again the cleaning in different ways, slightly different ways, of course. So we kind of missed. We had to go back and restrict to make it reproducible. We had to go back and redo some things. And so from the get-go, we would have done it with DuckDB. It would have been faster for one thing. In the end, we ended up using polars for all the data cleaning
Mm-hmm.
and that. That was our main way of doing it. But not everybody knows Python in the group, and well, maybe not everybody knows SQL, but a lot of us do. So that would have been a better choice for that case. I do know SQL, although another reason for me wanting to do this is that my SQL is very rusty because what you just said is true. I haven't been using it. I used to use it all the time, like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
daily, but I haven't used it for, I would say, maybe 6 years. So I'm very rusty on it. So I'm looking forward to getting a chance to put some SQL into practice. I don't know how well the book itself covers SQL. Hopefully, that gives us a little refresher for those who don't know, and an introduction for those who, I should say, refresher for those who need it, and an introduction for those who haven't used it before. But we'll see when we get to those chapters, I suppose.
I had gone through, I think, chapters 3 and 4, and so I, kind of know SQL, but I'm definitely not a SQL sort of like fanatic or expert. And I felt like that they did kind of bring me up to speed in a
Okay,
helpful way.
good.
But they're also not like, like maybe it's not like a hardcore SQL book, but yeah, it was. I found it to be helpful. Yeah. And yeah, that's
Awesome.
interesting what she said about polars. It seems like that's kind of like almost like the big competitor in terms of like really fast data frame type libraries. Is right now maybe like DuckDB and polars are kind of like the two sort of data frame like libraries that are quite fast. So
Yeah, they have a similar strategy or
mm,
philosophy of taking your whatever your query is, your long query, and then like processing it and figuring out how to do it best, and then doing it all in one
mhm,
fast run,
yeah.
which is kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have a slide, I guess,
Oh, cool.
down a couple slides in showing kind of like some of the benchmarks, and they're like 100 times or a couple hundred times faster than R and dplyr in some applications. So, uh, but yeah, I mean, neck and neck with polars. It seems like pretty much every time they do a new benchmark. So. Okay, well, it sounds like a great group, an unexpected, high proportion of people from Ontario, so that's exciting. And yeah, I guess I'll jump in.
Oh, I forgot
Unless,
to mention
oh,
I'm not from Ontario, surprisingly.
oh, oh,
I'm in
oh,
Arizona in the United States.
oh, okay, great. Okay, so I'll jump in. And so yeah, so welcome. I think we've kind of got our welcomes out of the way. Yeah, I guess my agenda for today is maybe to try to cover some like very perfunctory logistics, talk about chapter one, and then at the end, I don't know if I think we'll get to at least some of it is talk about how to interface with this like book club GitHub repository. And I think I may be focused a little too much on that, but in the past I've sometimes hit snags, kind of interfacing with these book club repositories, and so I wanted to try to like ward off as many of them as we can, especially because if we are using if we have like R and Python and SQL, like we might have to be a little bit more careful, kind of managing the dependencies and stuff. But I think I might be too more worried about that than I think it might just kind of handle itself. But I'll cover that later on. So yeah, so the kind of overall structure of the book club is that every week someone will present a chapter of the book, and I think how you present it is a little bit up to you. It could be more like of a lecture. It could be more interactive. It doesn't have to be. Um, and some of the other book clubs I've done, I think people feel this pressure to put together like a really kind of elaborate presentation, and I don't think it has to be that. Like, I don't know that you need to have slides if you don't, uh, you don't want to. I think you could just, I think whatever kind of makes sense for you. So I think, but yeah, I think the goal isn't to like be so much more expert than everyone else. It's just to kind of guide us through the material. So I think I want to take some of the pressure off of that. So to claim a chapter that you want to present, you can click either this link. I guess I'll post these slides afterwards in the GitHub, I guess. But there's a bookmark tab in Slack that has a link to this Google spreadsheet that allows you to claim a chapter, and then there's also a link to this GitHub repository. And one thing I wanted to bring up is I had reached out to. I can't remember his name. One of the authors of the book, Mark or Michael Simmons, I think, right? Is that his name? Well, sorry, Michael, if you watch this on YouTube. Uh, yes, I believe it's Michael, and I reached out to him on Mastodon and asked if he would ever want to attend one of our meetings, and he said he was open to it if it kind of worked with his schedule. So I could try to arrange that. I'm not sure that and I wanted to gauge the level of interest. Like if say he wanted to meet at like a different time, would people like be excited about that, or is it just kind of too much to uh, to schedule around and stuff?
No, I'd be down for it.
Okay.
In fact, if I'm also in the Discord for DuckDB, so I'll
Oh,
reach
okay.
out to any kind of prominent person there, see if they're interested
Okay.
in doing this, and if you guys are open to that as well, that I'm open to it for sure.
Oh, could you share
And
that in maybe the Slack chat if you didn't already, the Discord? That'd be kind of cool.
And then I see that Josh has raised his hand.
Yes. Just an idea that I'm taking from another book club that ran recently. We like kept a running list of questions or like sources of confusion during the chapters. And then the author of that book, Klaus Wilkie, is coming in, I think sometime in the next couple of weeks for like a larger meeting. And we're just gonna like in part to answer our questions and stuff. So maybe a meeting with the author, Michael, if I recall his first name correctly, towards the end of like the book club when we have maybe more experience with what he's written and questions for him would be good.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I hadn't even thought about that. But yeah, maybe we could do, maybe I can get John to add like another bookmark to just like a Google document or something where we write out our questions that we might ask. Yeah, that's a great thought. And then I see Ron also has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point though that you should coordinate with John about if you are going to use a different time,
right? Yep,
because
that's a good point.
The Zoom is limited.
Yep.
We're limited. I think we only have the one Zoom, so
yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, we only have the one account, and I guess we could use, like I think what the limit on my sort of like free Zoom account, I think is maybe like 25 or 50 people. So we probably could, but then we wouldn't get like the video recording technology and stuff. So yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
But I'm in all favor of that. That's we've done that with another book club, and it worked out really well. Although we didn't do what was suggested by Josh, that is keep a list of questions. So we didn't actually. We kind of didn't have that many questions for him, and I know we were like, wow, I forgot this one thing I wanted to ask. So that's a really good idea. I'm in favor of that as well.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, I will, I'll definitely follow up with him. And I kind of like by accident had gotten in contact. I signed up for the Mother Duck Slack. There's a Mother Duck. So Mother Duck is this company that's like kind of a commercializing like the cloud aspect of DuckDB. And so I signed up for their Slack and kind of by accident got into contact with like one of their I don't know, marketing people or something, and she had said that like they could send someone from Mother Duck to the book club. So I know there's a Mother Duck chapter. So if we did want to try to invite someone, I don't know that they would come, but I could try to. I'll see if they're available for that Mother Duck chapter. But otherwise, I don't know. I mean, is that something people would be interested in? I don't know how. If it would be extra helpful or maybe not that helpful, but
yeah, I think it doesn't hurt, especially if they want to present the chapter, that'd be great too, right?
Yeah, that'd be great. That's for us. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, that's not great.
I was just going to add about that. I guess it depends on who they send us. And
yeah,
like what
that's
their expectations are. Like, I guess we're not the people who can sign our companies up to Mother Duck subscriptions. But so if they're looking to get sales, maybe we're the wrong audience. But
that's a good point. Yeah.
If they just want to talk like about it, I think that's cool.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, because that's what I wanted to avoid. I didn't want like a pitch or something about like why we should do this. But yeah, I think we can ask and see who they would be interested in sending. Okay, so I think that's it for the logistics, unless anyone has any other questions. Okay, so that was my agenda. So yeah, I'll dive into chapter 1, and it was a pretty brief chapter, and also like fairly, I think, high level, not like maybe the most detailed chapter, but trying to like drum up excitement maybe for this newer technology. So the learning goal for today is to understand what DuckDB is and why we should bother to learn it. And there's a lot of adjectives. I noticed that they used to describe DuckDB in here and other places. But so in the chapter heading, they describe it as a single node in-memory database that integrates well. This is my summary into many places in the data pipeline. And so in other places, they describe it as like an in-process database. So I think that's kind of an interesting term that I dive into on another slide. So it's at a very high level, you could almost think of it as like uh, a database for people who are used to like R or Python style kind of in-memory data processing. It's not, maybe that's not quite that's a little coarse, but I think that's getting somewhere. But unlike R and Python, it's like very, very fast. And I'll have some benchmarks on the next slide. Oh, Josh.
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute.
That's
I think I understand what in-memory database means, that you can load it all into your computer's RAM. What does single node mean? I'm not familiar with like what that means in terms of process or architecture.
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. Like, I think one, I have some questions listed out later on. I'm like, okay, maybe we should try to dig into these terms a little bit more. But so like, I think single node to me is it's running on like one like CPU, either like a real CPU or if it's in the cloud, like one like virtual CPU. So like by contrast, you could, if you have like a cluster, so that I think is what like Spark, or I don't know, there's all kinds, there's like Hadoop, and I don't know, there's like a whole world of these clustering kind of frameworks. And so they're like basically breaking up a workload and splitting it across multiple computers on a
Okay.
network. And so that like is, I mean, especially from the standpoint of like someone without like a big IT kind of uh, team or something, that's like a real pain, honestly. Like, it's maybe not, I think it's probably gotten easier. But so DuckDB, I think their kind of pitch is like, okay, to analyze a 100 GB data set, you used to need to use Spark or to cluster it, and now you don't. Now you can just kind of have it on your one, single node, could be like your MacBook, and then or your computer or whatever, and then that's kind of your analytical space, and so you don't have to have this like distributed. Oh, Andreas.
Yeah, you mentioned it right now. What are the requirements to run DuckDB? The
Um,
technical requirements.
so I think it's like, I mean, one of its like selling points too. I don't know. Now I'm feeling like I'm turning into like a salesman. But so it's like it's as a binary file. It's like kind of shockingly small. I think it's like maybe 25 megabytes. Um, oh, sorry, I've clicked off my thing here. But yeah, I mean, I think it is. I don't know. I'd have to go to the GitHub maybe, but it's quite small. So it does fit into like you could run it on like quite a sort of like anemic computer. I think if you have like a virtual cloud instance that has like two CPU cores and 8 GB of memory, I think you could run DuckDB on that. Maybe because of the memory limitations, you might start to have some issues, but yeah, I think it does run on. It's pretty easy to install on pretty. I mean, definitely on Mac and Linux, and I don't know. I haven't tried to install it on Windows, but
So,
I yeah.
well, one of the things I read about was the fact that it's very much akin to like a SQLite, whereby
Hmm.
if if you know a little bit about SQLite, it's used quite often to embed into even things like wearable watches and kind of
Hmm.
IoT devices, right? So the fact that this is kind of in that parallel universe, I think shows how ubiquitous it is in terms of where it could be used. So maybe that kind of gives a hint in terms of the footprint
Yep.
being so small, to Corey's point.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, I don't know, I don't know if you could do it on like a smartwatch, but maybe you could. I mean, I don't know. I've seen little microcontrollers that have like 32 megabytes of flash. So like maybe you could, I don't know, maybe that would be kind of pointless, but like I think one of its strengths is it can fit into a lot of little places that maybe like a big database can't. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Um, and then, one thing that I think is, kind of interesting is that the book did go over this, like the kind of core IP for DuckDB, is invented by these two Dutch researchers, I think, and they kind of transferred the IP to this nonprofit foundation. So there's like a commercial entity, I guess, called DuckDB Labs that I think does like consulting and development of the program, but sort of like the core IP is owned by this foundation, so we can have some confidence that it will remain open source for as long as we care about it. I think we there's not a risk that it might get sort of maybe as the company scales or something like that, they'll start to kind of claw back some of the open source offerings, which I do think, when you're thinking about whether to invest time into learning something, stuff like that, I think is kind of important. Okay. So, I just pulled some speed benchmarks. And so these are from the DuckDB labs. I'm not sure if they run these benchmarks or if they're just citing them, but I did pull them from their website. And so this is a query on 5 gigabytes of data. So like maybe not like the biggest data set, but like, still kind of big. And you can see kind of the relative performance of DuckDB versus all of these, in this case, like data frame libraries like dplyr and is pandas on here? Maybe not. But yeah, I mean, like data table and polars, I guess, is on there. But yeah, you can see like there's a huge drop off between kind of like dplyr, and then there's this kind of middle section of like faster data frame libraries from R. So that'd be like data table collapse. And then the kind of all the leaders are these products that are maybe more like polars or DuckDB. And I actually think like ClickHouse and Data Fusion are kind of like a different product entirely, and I don't know what CHDB is, but Andreas.
Oh, my mic was on still.
Oh.
I'm somehow confused because data table dplyr, I wasn't aware that these are considered databases. I would expect DuckDB and MongoDB and that you that they would compare stuff like this, MongoDB and
yeah, I think that's
other databases, but
yeah, I think that's a great question, and like it kind of the next slide highlights that a little bit, although I guess it doesn't include as many databases. So I'll try to, let's see how to answer that. So like I think an interesting thing about DuckDB is that it replaces some functions of like a library like dplyr or pandas or whatever, and then it also can replace some functions of like a database. It doesn't like fully replace either, and so like you couldn't use DuckDB instead of and I actually don't know the architecture of like MongoDB. I know like Postgres, is kind of like this like maybe like the most famous kind of like large scale database. Like you couldn't replace Postgres with DuckDB. It's like missing a lot of features that framework has, but you can process large amounts of data with DuckDB like you could in Postgres. And like likewise, maybe there's some things that dplyr is kind of better at than DuckDB, but a lot of stuff that you can do with dplyr, you can also do with DuckDB. So it is kind of in this like middle space where it's replacing some data frame, like what you think of as like a data frame function, and also some database functionality. But I do think it's more like you definitely wouldn't use it. Like if you wanted like a database that like records all the like sales from your website or something, I don't think you'd use DuckDB for that. And some of those later slides cover this a little bit, but it is really more for like almost like you could think of it as like a single user, I think. I think that's kind of where the distinction comes in a little bit, is like if you're thinking, okay, like this is a database that like one person is gonna use to do some analysis, then that's kind of where DuckDB comes in. I think if you're thinking like, oh, okay, we have to like have like a million concurrent writes, every minute because we're recording all our transactions, like then DuckDB is not the right framework, I think. So that does come up. There's this kind of section in this first chapter, like when not to use DuckDB, and so we'll hit that a little bit. Okay, I'll move on. I don't know if anyone, and and just to clear, I'm not like an expert in DuckDB. I guess I kind of like, I'm shooting from the hip a little bit here, so I don't want to like, um, uh, I think I kind of only know what's in the book. So uh, okay, so yeah, so just to kind of keep trying to describe and define this technology, we've talked about how it's like an in-process database, and I think that's like an interesting term. And so like I find this a little confusing, and I have a question about it on the next slide, but like, it runs in another application's memory space, and so like typically that's going to be like Python or R. And so that gives it like some really powerful features, like it can interact directly with like a pandas data frame that's stored in Python's memory. But also has some limitations as well. So I would say like maybe like the classic application is to speed up what we could think of as like traditional small data workflows. So if I don't know, I'm thinking of myself, like you're a researcher and you used to do like data sets that are 1 GB, and now you're doing data sets that are like 100 GB. You can't really do that using R&D player. Suddenly you can do that with DuckDB, and it's fast and has some kind of memory advantages that enable that workflow. And then, yeah, I think it has all these like, oh, sorry, Andreas.
But you can use dplyr or dbplyr. There's a special library for databases to use the same syntax. You can use that because my SQL is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd be interested to hear, what other people think about this. But so like they definitely have this dplyr translation API. They have like a pandas / like Python API. And I've like mostly used the R, like the dplyr API. My sense is that some of the cooler features are not in those APIs. I don't know if like they're in the SQL API and not. I don't know if other people have a different sense of that.
I had a quick peek
Yep.
through DuckPlyer, and it
Mhm.
looks like there's an extra like add-on package DD that gives you the
Mm.
extra transformation stuff.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah, and so I actually don't know. There's some features like you could kind of like roll back like data, and you could have like a sort of like have like snapshots almost of data frames that you can like roll back, or like transactional rollbacks or something like that. Like I don't think like, and so I know that's just kind of vague, but like I don't think dplyr implements that, or the dplyr API implements that, but I think the SQL one does. But I could be wrong about that. That's just kind of my but yeah, for me, I think I've been using the dplyr API when I feel like it works, but I also have been kind of trying to push myself to learn the SQL because it does feel like it unlocks a little extra functionality. I don't know how accurate that is. Maybe that's something that Michael could speak to. But oh yeah, and I see. Huh. Okay. So yeah, I didn't know about this. Huh. Oh wow. Yeah. So maybe eventually, all the features will be available on every syntax. That would be cool. Um, Yeah, and like Amir said, like it can operate in a lot of like edge and cloud contexts. Like maybe I don't know if it can go in a smartwatch, but maybe it might be able to. I don't know. Like it could, you know, uh, I don't think there's a version that runs on iOS, but it could run in like an iOS sized device. Like I do think it can run in lots of places. The authors kind of describe this instance where they have an S3 bucket, so like an Amazon hosted like data set basically hosted on Amazon's cloud storage. And instead of like transferring that data, which like would cost money to analyze elsewhere, they're able to just like load that data into memory in, I think, like a virtual machine running Python. They didn't say this. This is kind of, I was guessing. Uh, and then doing analysis directly there without having to like do these more costly like transfers and stuff. So you could potentially save money and time in the cloud.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
interesting. Sorry,
oh,
just on that point there, it's interesting to have that capability, particularly now in the kind of realm of AI, where you think of like private, the privacy
yeah.
aspect of data, and having, a tool like this that can be specific to analytics and act as a place to store your data, right? Whether it's a device or, something else.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think I mean, one argument that they make in this chapter one is like there is like a privacy argument maybe for, and that if you don't have to send your data off to some cloud platform to analyze it, then maybe you might feel a little bit more secure. If you're just doing it locally or whatever, maybe that's a higher level of security. Oh, Andreas.
Mir reminded me to ask another question.
Mm,
I'm not a computer scientist or informatics guy or engineer or whatever. So I sometimes ask myself if I can use a separate place than my notebook
mm,
to save the data or to
mm-hmm.
install DuckDB or something like that. I don't know these technical things. I have a
Yeah.
I have an external external disk
Mhm,
which which has more space than
mhm.
my laptop right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know if this is technical possible. I don't know. This is
Yeah, I mean,
the
I
question.
think so. And I think we will kind of get, I think later in the book about, okay, like what are the different ways of like interacting with? I think that's like, especially maybe chapter two, three, and four, kind of like, okay, like, are you in a notebook? Are you in a terminal? Or like, how are you interacting with DuckDB? And so, yeah, there are quite a few different ways to do it. But yeah, that I think you could for sure do that. Like if you have a hard drive that you're plugging into your computer, and you could I think you could query, it would be slower because I think you'd be loading data from like a slow disk over a slow connection, but like you could do that. Like if I don't think you would have to transfer it into you wouldn't have to like swap it onto your main drive and then swap it back later. Like you could just have a file that lived on an external hard drive, I think. um, Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll kind of dive into that later. But yeah, I think that's a really great question. And all these are like, okay, like there's lots of different places we could fit this technology. Like it could kind of like squeeze it into a lot of different places. And yeah, those were kind of that's kind of maybe my biggest question is like I have this question about like what counts as a process. Like, could you query a hard disk that's plugged in with a USB cable to your laptop? Like I think so, and so like what are the limits of that kind of definition? And then there's also this question of like, okay, how big can you get with DuckDB? In the book they say like a few hundred gigabytes. And so, I think having a greater sense of the technical limitations there. I know I've definitely uh, maybe, have had devices that will have like 16 or 32 gigabytes of RAM and have used DuckDB on data sets that are quite a bit larger than that. And so I do think, it's not like dplyr where if you load in a data set that's you know, 20 gigabytes and you have 16 gigabytes of RAM, then your computer will crash. DuckDB is doing a lot of stuff to either like analyze data on the disk or to like chunk up the data, but I don't know how far you can stretch that. Like I think like you can't, it doesn't stretch forever. And I've definitely had moments where it crashes, but I don't really know what the technical limitations are. Uh, yeah, so those are kind of my big questions about like the overall architecture. I don't know if anyone else. Okay.
I think for
So,
me that's pretty similar to if you
mhm,
had like a local SQLite or a remote database. Yeah, it could definitely be many times
mhm,
larger than memory. And I suspect the actual limit is how big a calculation you're doing that needs to create like
yeah.
virtual tables or whatever is inside. If you're just summing columns, you can probably do that as much as you want and not hit a limit. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
the
think, yeah.
vectorized process is what's really interesting to me. Like, I'm guessing that's where some of that
Mm,
speed comes from.
hmm. Yeah, and like to be honest, I don't understand that. And that's like another term you hear a lot is like, oh, it's like a columnar table format and it's vectorized and that makes it really good. I don't really know what those things mean, but I understand vectorization a little bit, but yeah, it seems like that is to its speed is attributable to that in large part. I don't know. So, um, but yeah, I mean, it's like a lot of these questions have kind of gotten at, like there are definitely applications where DuckDB doesn't do that well. So one would be very large data sets, and I don't know what the exact cutoff is. And obviously depends on maybe if your device has 256 gigabytes of RAM, then maybe your cutoff is going to be higher than if it has 8 gigabytes of RAM. But certainly if you're getting into like terabyte size data sets, maybe you can't maybe DuckDB is not an option there. So streaming data, and actually these next two bullets are kind of related. It seems like say you're streaming data from like a bunch of sensors, or I don't know, like sales data from an e-commerce site, or I don't know, all kinds of stuff. Maybe this wouldn't be. Yeah, it seems like it excels at these kind of like more chunked operations, like if you're kind of loading in large batches rather than individual data points. Although again, like it's possible that this section of the book has become dated, because I did see a recent blog post on DuckDB Labs about trying to use it as a streaming database. So maybe that no longer holds true. And again, the big one is like applications involving a lot of like concurrent writes. So I think if you wanted a database and you're like, okay, I want my website to write to it for all my sales, and I want my analyst to be able to read from it, kind of all at the same time. Like then DuckDB can't. That's where you have to kind of look at a more traditional sort of database solution. I think it can only have one sort of. I know you can only have one person able to write to it at a time. I don't know about reads, but yeah. So it is very much this like single user paradigm. Like almost think of it as like a data frame where you wouldn't have like you and your like colleague wouldn't use the same data frame, and in the same way maybe you wouldn't use the same I mean obviously if you're sharing, like maybe there's ways to share it, but like in general, like and I guess we'll probably get into that about like um I forget, I think Ron mentioned like, oh, if you have like a sort of like a polyglot team, like how could you share, like maybe you could use Parquet to kind of like but have both R users and Python users sort of querying the Parquet with, I think there's lots of options, but like in general, like if like you want like a big database that a lot of people are using simultaneously, you probably don't want DuckDB. Okay, so how do you use it? And so this is my editorializing a little bit, but it does seem like SQL is kind of like the first class API. It kind of gets all the new features first. It's definitely like the best documented. Like if you look on DuckDB's website at the documentation, the SQL API is like really pretty well documented. While the R and Python APIs are less well documented. So I do think it's a good encouragement to learn SQL if or to brush up on SQL. And I think we'll dive into all this like later on, so I'll just kind of like brisk over it. But it supports like a lot of file types, has fast readers for Parquet, which I think is kind of like one of the preferred formats. I think for DuckDB, I think Parquet works really well. For in-memory data frames like Pandas data frames or R data frames or whatever, for CSV files, for JSON files, sorry, I've made a typo here. For Apache Arrow columnar shaped data. Actually, I don't know what that is. I thought kind of Parquet was the Apache format, but I don't know. And then also like these cloud buckets like S3 or Google Cloud storage. And I should also mention that there is a DuckDB file format that is maybe similar to Parquet, and I think it's compressed. So like one feature of Parquet is that it's compressed on the disk. So if you have a 100 gigabyte CSV file, maybe it's only like a 20 gigabyte Parquet file or something like that. But it also allows you to save multiple tables. So whereas like you think a CSV file is going to be one big table, this DuckDB format, you can have like a few tables, more like a database. So it's kind of an interesting format. I don't know too much about it, to be honest, but I should have it on this list probably. And then, yeah, so DuckDB supports, kind of traditional SQL data types like strings, and integers and floats and stuff like that. And then also some data types that are more common in like scripting languages or programming languages like enums, lists, maps, which are similar to like a Python dictionary, structs. And so I think we'll probably dive into how to use those data types in later chapters. And then, there is this kind of unique SQL syntax for DuckDB that is, I think, like they're trying to make it user friendly. Like as an example, in a lot of SQL dialects, if you want to select all the columns in a table, you have to like literally type like select and then like a comma separated list of all the names of the columns. In DuckDB, you can use this sort of select asterisk, and that will do the same thing. So they're just kind of maybe trying to take away some of the pain points. But again, I think this is more chapter 3. Okay, so we don't have that much time left, so I am gonna kind of speed through this a little bit. But so, and anyone who's been in a book club before will know this. Like we have this repository at this web address, and that's also linked in the Slack. And so as we sort of upload presentations, the repository uses GitHub Actions and Corto to build this website that looks like a book. And so we're sort of like documenting our journey, and so that's kind of a fun thing. But it can get a little tricky. At least for me, I've had issues with kind of like dependency management and stuff like that. I like getting my local setup to mirror the GitHub Action setup. So I just wanted to include a few notes on that. And so yeah, the general, and if anyone ever has trouble with it, definitely I could be happy to help. But the general gist is like a normal, just treat it like a normal sort of public GitHub repository. To make changes, you would fork the repository, make your own personal copy, commit your changes to that repository, and then you would make like a pull request to the main repository. And yeah, I know I'm kind of speeding through this. I think if anyone has any questions, maybe we can go through it again. But so that's the basics, and John has really fleshed out that process on the description of the repository. So there's some detailed instructions there. Every chapter is kind of has a Corto file that is, I think the subdirectory is dash slides or like underscore slides, I think is what the subdirectory is called. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, underscore slide, or no, sorry, not underscore, just slides. All the raw files are just slides. And just like here's like the file path for this presentation. Yeah, so all the raw Corto files are in slides. You can edit them kind of to that's up to you, I guess, whatever content you want to include. And then if you want to export as a more of a slideshow, which I think is more presentation friendly, you can use this from the command line. You can use Corto render to reveal.js, or if you can change the sort of format option in the Corto YAML header. And so if you do either of those things, your slides will by default, they'll render to this path. So underscore site /slide / this, in this case, it'd be like 01.html. Okay, so dependency management is usually not a problem, I think, but if you do start to load in different packages or different, whatever into if you want to utilize some extra functions in your Corto, then maybe you want to pay a little bit more attention to this. So the high level overview is basically like the GitHub Actions that generates the book is setting up in our environment that's loading all the packages that are listed in this description file. And so if you want, well, I don't know, I'll cover that in the next slide. And then, so right now there are no Python dependencies, but I am going to add a pyproject.toml file, which will do the same thing. So like, if you do want to add a package to the kind of environment that renders the book, then you can add it in either pyproject.toml or in description. Here is a sort of like little script. And so I haven't tested this extensively. So this will install pack and rend, and which are two kind of useful R packages for this sort of dependency management stuff. And we'll install the packages in the description file in your local environment if you just want to be running rendering the book or whatever you want to do yourself. Python, again, there are no dependencies at the moment, but I think we'll use this pyproject.toml file. And so there are a lot of dependency management frameworks in Python. Probably like the best one right now is this kind of UV framework. I think is really, really good. I mean, you can see like this amount of code versus this amount of code is a compelling case for UV here. But yeah, so if you want all the Python dependencies to mess around with on your local machine, you can use UV sync, and source will activate a virtual environment. If you want to add packages, and so this is just reiterating what I said, you have to update the description file for an R package and update the pyproject.toml file for a Python package. So to update description, you can use this as an R package that will do that for you kind of automatically. And again, UV will, you can install and update the sort of package list at the same time using UV add. So yeah, so again, to reiterate, if you want to add packages, pyproject.toml and description. If you have like a rem.lock or a uv.lock file, you probably don't want to commit those. I think you want to commit just these two files. And getting to this question of like, oh, what do we use? Do we use notebooks or whatever? Quarto does have this functionality to execute database, to execute SQL against a database. And so here, maybe you could read this at your leisure, I guess, but and it's sort of in this blog post that I'll include. But if you want to have an actual execute database commands in your presentation in the Quarto document, you can kind of set up the connection to the database using either this sort of R style syntax or this Python style syntax. And then you can actually run like SQL queries in Quarto, which I did not know you could do, but I think that's pretty cool. And so if you get tired of all this and you don't want to think about this stuff and it's just a big pain, we can resort to this freeze option. So if you have and you can't reconcile your local machine in the repository and you're getting, you don't want to think about this or waste time on this, you can just render your file locally, include this freeze true in your sort of Quarto header, and then just make sure to add your rendered file also to version control. So there'll be like an HTML file or something that will come out of your rendering, and so make sure to add that. And so that will tell sort of this GitHub Actions pipeline to don't re-render this file, just take the HTML from the that's in this _freeze folder and put that in the website instead. So that's a way to avoid all that. Yeah, and so I think that was I just wanted to put that, if you have any questions, you can look at those slides. I think we can also work through them if any issues come up, but I wanted to kind of head off some of those issues. And then, sorry, we're kind of running against time, but next week, chapter 2 is really quite short and simple. And chapter 3 is a little longer. I was wondering if, maybe we wanted to, we could split chapter 3 into 2 parts, and then just also include chapter 2 in kind of that first part. Chapter 2 is really mostly okay, how do you install DuckDB? It's pretty simple stuff. So it's quite short. I don't know if I saw someone had signed up to do chapter 3. I can't remember who it was. And he might not be here today. Also, okay, I'll make a post about that, I guess, and we can kind of tackle that maybe offline since we're at time. Okay, so yeah, thanks everybody. And sorry I had to speed through that last part. Definitely we can, if we hit any issues, we can either troubleshoot them as a group, or John is, I think, pretty good about oh, okay, here's how we can fix this. So yeah. Oh, no, hit stop. Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Cory.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah, I'm
everyone.
excited to get into it.
All right. See you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.